Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Player 2 podcast. I'm your co-host, Rade Strasavlovich.
And I'm your co-host, Dave Leary. It is good to be back with you again, Roddy. We cannot resolve our Crimson Desert bet yet this week, but we will resolve it next episode.
Which is perfect, because that's right before I'm going to take a vacation for spring break. And I could figure out how I'm going to send you, or you can send me.
That's right.
It looks like I'm going to send you.
We don't know yet. 3 weeks is hard to sustain, so we'll see how we do.
Fair enough. All right. Bunch of interesting stuff to talk about this week, but let's start with the news. Some interesting developments with Valve.
Yeah, 100%. So they signed a contract with Facepunch, who are the makers of Rust and Garry's Mod, to release what I believe will amount to a new platform. They have named it S&Box, so it's Sandbox if you want to use the term that they have applied to it. On the surface, you could argue this is just Garry's Mod plus, but I'm going to assert, and you're welcome to disagree, that I think this could be something that could compete with a lot of things like Unreal and Unity and Godot. There are some things that are pretty attractive about what they're talking about. It's not going to have any licensing fees for the platform itself. It's guaranteed to work with Steam cross-platform, which is pretty nice out of the gate. And certainly people have a lot of fond memories of the original Source Engine stuff and Garry's Mod, so I think there's an appetite for this.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. So pretty early on, the form of it should take shape, right? Like, is this going to be for like who the customer is going to be for this? What types of games do they want? Is it going to look more like UEFN on Fortnite? Is it going to look more like traditional mods for indie games, or is it going to look more like Roblox? And I'm sure they've got ideas of what they think it's going to look like, but ultimately the customers coming into that are going to force that decision to be made.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
Sort of related to that, I saw Indie.io is launching an Indie Pass subscription service, $7 a month, and it's basically Game Pass for indie titles, which I think is pretty interesting. Just discovery for indies has always been a problem, and like it's not going to get solved at a platform level. There's potential for titles that maybe just didn't get the kind of launch that they wanted, didn't get the attention that they deserved, to get some visibility and get picked up in this pass and kind of get a rebirth of sorts. So I'm excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of interesting to me. I don't know, as someone who consumes a lot of indie games, I don't know how super excited I am about that. I mean, the attractiveness of something like the Game Pass model is I can try out something that's, $60 or at retail with an indie version of that. I mean, you're talking about games that typically are, $10, $15, $20 that are much more of like impulse buy territory. And I'm kind of like, why wouldn't I just own it rather than this service?
I don't think it's for you. I think it's for the kids who are used to free games and wanting to try a bunch of stuff. And as a parent, thinking about it from that perspective, if I can constrain what my kids are buying to an allowance of $7 a month or whatever it is, and then they have this whole portfolio of things that they could check out and play, that's pretty attractive.
Yeah, that's a fair point. It may not be for me, but it may be for somebody else. And I could totally see the patterns of play that kids have these days. That could be an appealing model.
It kind of got me thinking. I was just chatting with a couple gamer friends of mine in Discord, and there's this retro gaming festival going on in a couple weeks. And one of the guys was saying, hey, you should take your son to that and tell him how it was in the old days. And I made a joke because back when we worked together, one of the guys bought a copy of a game, and inside of this nice box, because he went to the store and he liked to own his games, just like you described, was a little card with a Steam code on it and nothing else. And he was pissed. He was like, I don't even get a physical CD or anything. It's just a Steam code in this big old box. So yeah, we've got to be careful we don't date ourselves.
Yeah.
Hey, one other thing in the news, Rec Room, the VR social game and title, they're shutting down. And I thought, like, we've got a special guest this week, and she's got some insider news in VR. I thought we'd bring her on into the news segment and talk about that. I'd like to welcome Jennifer Lane back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me again.
Our first return guest. It's wonderful to have you back, Jen.
Yeah,
sure. You can have me visit anytime you want. I love being here. I love listening to the podcast as well.
Awesome. Hey, so for those of you that forgot, so Jen's been a developer for a long time, and most recently was working on Gorilla Tag at another Axiom. So Jen, what's your take on Rec Room? 10-year run. for them?
Yeah, so I don't know what's going on with them internally because only they really know what's going on. But being close to that world in VR and knowing that they've been here going on for more than 10 years, I think that it first came out in 2014. They're on multiple platforms, but they're known for the VR. It's sad. I have concerns because I still think that there's a future in VR. Having worked in it, I get it from the inside now what it means to experience and explore and be inside another world. And Rec Room really provided that social experience where maybe you weren't physically in the room with somebody to socialize, but they are right in front of their face. And as they're talking and moving, their avatars are talking and moving. It's as close as you can get to being in a room with someone without actually being in the room. And I know some of the developers. I know a good number of developers there, and they're really good and they really care. And so I just think it's unfortunate. And between that and Horizon Worlds and some of the other studios that close, also going along with everything else that's happening overall in the gaming and the tech industries. It's sad for me personally as a developer, but I think it's just adds to the scary time that we're having as an industry as it's transforming into something that is with far fewer people, and we don't know what that's going to be. And I think it's too early to tell the impact on upcoming games, what that's going to have.
Yeah, I think that's true. From a platform level, I remember when it launched in VR, I was at Meta at the time. It was the source of the first meme that had some negative, it was a negative meme that got pulled into the game and it got surfaced in there. I'm not going to say which one, but if you guys were paying attention back then, you probably know what it was. And Facebook at the time just didn't know what to do with it. And they're like, like what's going on here? And then someone explained it, and anyway, it got into a little bit of controversy, but it was the place to go and hang out. It had big numbers for a while. My take on it from a platform level is probably two things. I think their cost structure to operate this was probably higher than their ability to monetize it. And so I don't think they were making much money at all. I don't know if they were losing money or not, but I just don't think they were able to make much on it. And that coincides with the newer cohort of users that have been coming into VR for the past several years that are looking for more free titles. And if you don't design a free title with monetization in mind early on, that's going to work for that audience. There's almost no examples of that coming in after the launch and working well. And they may have been pinched by that as well.
I think there was something a couple of years ago, and I hope I'm not saying this, that it was another team, but I remember something that they had a layoff a couple of years ago because they had made some really big bets about investing in their UGC and some of the platform work that went with that. And they realized that they were working on too many things at one time and they weren't able to execute to the level where they wanted to, and spent a lot of time and a lot of money in that. So this may be related to that, like the long-term effects.
Yeah, I mean, we saw from the Fortnite layoffs last week, it was 1,000 people, mostly on that. And like those titles with UGC in it, like this takes a lot of people. Like it's not even just because your content is being created by your customers doesn't mean you don't have a huge team that's responsible for compliance and reviewing stuff and the technical aspect of it. And so those can get really expensive really quickly.
One of the things I wish now, if I had to go back in time as a developer, and I have a specialty in live operations. I've worked on both development and live operations. And you both were talking about this a couple of podcasts ago. I almost wish we didn't have live service the way it is, because I started off in MMOs. It was a different type of live service. It's like, let's keep the content going and the stories going. But it quickly became, this is a way we can monetize, and everything went into live operations. And I think that the impact to gaming, what we've developed as a culture, is untenable to be able to produce games. I wish we could go back to here's your box product, here's 40 hours for X number of dollars. And that's not the way I think as a player or a developer, but I think we have caused some of this on ourselves because we kept going for the look how much money this thing can make.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I mean, as cost went up, you couldn't charge more for the game. So live service was a way to keep people connected to your product for longer and potentially monetize with more content. And like the end of the day, people only have so many hours in the day. Like maybe you get a lot richer, but you don't have more hours in the day. So like, how's that going to work? You know, you're
Yeah.
going to spend time with fewer products.
We are seeing some backlash now, and I think we've talked about that here before. Live services is not quite as big as it once was, and some of the biggest successes of the last couple of years have been closer to the old model. I think about big single player titles like the recent Crimson Desert, Baldur's Gate 3. There's certainly stuff to point at in the last few years that does not follow that model. So hopeful that there's space for all this stuff. I do, I think, share your skepticism about where live service is today for sure.
It's exorbitant to run.
It is.
You
I
can point
really,
to some successes though, right? I mean, Roblox is still crazy, love it or hate it. Roblox is still doing huge numbers with their model.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't think these go away. I just don't think everything needs to be that. Like, I personally, I think I've said it before on here that I would like to see a return to X hours out of the box. You want more? There's DLC, and then an expansion pack is how we used to look at it. And I think that's a great way to do that. There's entire businesses. I mean, Jen, you worked on The Sims. That's been in that business model for well over a decade, and it's working really well for them.
Couple of decades.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Geez. All right. So I think that brings us into the topic of the week. I wanted to talk a little bit about production, how things are being done differently, and bring AI into it as well. But this time, speak with a lot more specific examples. And so, what got me thinking about this is a couple weeks ago, I was invited to down to LA to speak at USC. They were doing a partnership with their game school and with Carnegie Mellon's ETC conference. It's their graduate program there. They were talking about media and AI. And one of the things I was asked by somebody during the panel was like, what do you tell students who are coming into this medium right now about AI? And I thought about it for a minute and I said, well, look, you may be more digital native or AI native than a lot of folks, but with my experience building games for a long time, I will out prompt you. Like, because I know what to ask for, what not to ask for. And I've been talking to a couple other people that have been actually really experienced folks who have been doing this. Jen is one of them. She's got a side project she's been working on. Do you want to tell us what you've been doing?
Yeah. I built a platform called Insiderly.gg or .net, and it's in support of what's going on with gaming and tech, and so many people have lost their jobs. And because they have lost their jobs and their friends have all lost their jobs, there's just been so many mass layoffs. And because of AI tuning out all their resumes and stuff, it's not just hurt the people having jobs. There's not a lot to go to, and what still remains is getting an internal referral is the number one way to get seen by a human, to get a chance at interviewing. And networking has been severely impacted with all the layoffs because some people are trying to expand into different areas. So people that are coming from gaming are trying to go into straight tech or other industries, and that's really hard. So they don't have the network, or the people in their network that usually used to just jump on it. Oh, your studio just closed down. I got something for you when you want to meet. They're all laid off too. Or they're worried about their company getting laid off and don't want to bring someone on, or they're just now getting a job after a very long job search. And so that network is scared. They tend to, I've had people ghost me that I never thought would ghost me. You talk to them and they're like, oh, I got laid off 2 weeks ago. So I wanted a place where people could go to get those internal referrals, make those connections and get the internal referrals. And there's places, people do it on LinkedIn. There's a section on Team Blind, but there's no real place that focuses specifically on that side of things. And so that's why my passion for helping people, my passion for the industry that we're in, I wanted to do something more than just sit around. And I already mentor people with ASCG and stuff, but I wanted to do something more. So I started prototyping it in AI, I use Claude. There's a whole blog about that experience that's really kind of creepy, but funny. So it's worth a long read. I'm a developer, I'm a builder. I'm very specific. I'm like, it has to do this. This is the experience. So I had an idea in my head and it started prototyping, and very quickly I was able to realize this is where I'm going to have problems and this is a reality. And so I'm like, let me upskill, let me build this in this and see where it goes. And it was really successful. Now I put it out there as a very small MVP, so it doesn't have a lot of features. It functions real well. There's a lot more that I need to do to really establish it. And secondly, the thing that I have to look at now is how do I get the people that aren't just looking for jobs, but getting the people that have jobs that are willing to get on the site and help others. That's something that AI is not going to be able to help me as much. Building the platform behind it, I used AI, and I did it in a very collaborative way. I did not give it a series of prompts and say, go make it. And I knew that I wouldn't be successful. And it was when I did let it do something and I would catch it, it was like I was saving catastrophe from happening at times. So that's how that site came to be. That's Insiderly GG.
So we'll put a link in the comments section to this. It's interesting that you talked about the way you talked about your approach, because I've heard almost verbatim the same thing from other people that have been doing this. Is they treated the AI as a co-dev and not as just a like thing to say go do this. It was a very different process than what you see posted about in a lot of other places.
When I did let it go just do this, I would then have to step in as a faux engineer and have it undo what it did, because especially Claude is terrific, but it's built to be very overconfident. So it'll just start going. And it's fantastic and terrible at the same time. It would just build something and I'm like, and remember we talked about trying to make this as cheap as possible, free servers, is this going to work? And let me go optimize. So I would have to have it review stuff. I would have to have it review as engineering. There were times where it didn't listen to me, or I'd say, check for these vulnerabilities, and it's like it's all good, and then I would have it check later and be more specific, and it's like, here's your personal information in the handoff, those types of things. So I very quickly realized, for me, at least the way I was doing this, I did not build this with agents just running freely. Not this time. I needed to, like I would be working with an engineering team, these are the goals. This is the MVP. These are the high priorities. These are the low priorities. Let's work on the riskiest things first and see it through. I don't want to say handhold it, but it was slower than it could have gone in order to do more quality and understand behind every back end and front end. Are these really meeting the decisions that we want? And is it doing it in a correct way? Does it feel good to the user, which it's the least good at? The UX experience is something where I really had to be directive. Is it going to be stable? Is it optimized to not ping the server all the time and cost me money? Is it secure, because this is a place you have to sign up and you're supplying some personal information? When you're dealing with somebody's private information, you better make sure that it can handle it well. So there's a lot of facets that you have to work through with it. And it can build in a snap, but to build what you want in your vision and as a product, not just like this is cool, but this is a product and it is operable, it's scalable, it's something that people can engage with. I was there alongside the way.
Wow, as I hear you talking about this, it sounds exactly like the way a producer in general thinks about a team and working with a team. Feel like all your experience as a producer kind of helped you probably do this in ways that, yeah.
100%, including there's been times when I've worked with great engineers and they're like, yeah, don't worry about this, is easy. Or they over engineer something, is to ask, not just like get it done, but what is this going to impact? How is this going to function? How long is it going to take? What are the downstream effects? My production and product and developer expertise helped me to not just trust the AI, trust and verify, I guess I would say, is to make sure that there's a lot of different ways to do things, but make sure it's doing something so I can build on top of it and that it's a good experience for people. And that is, it's rare that you can throw something over the wall and just say, get it done, because there's a lot of assumptions that are made, and that's a human to human interaction. It's human to AI as well. The more information you can give it that doesn't hold it back, lets it go do its thing, but it has the parameters to work within, I think the better product you can build.
I mean, I think your cost example is a really good one. Like, you know, if you don't know that too many calls into your cloud provider's database, or you're writing to storage too often where you're paying for read write, like that stuff adds up really quickly. And like if you didn't provide an engineer or the AI or anyone that constraint, they might take the fastest path to get there. And you suddenly look at it like, oh, my whole P&L just is shot. This doesn't work. Why? And you got to figure out where did it go wrong. So I think that's really interesting.
And you can't just say it once. You have to have it, put it into its rule set and check in repeatedly because it forgets.
Yeah, it does. I think you both made an analogy about working with a dev team, but I'll take it a step more specific. It sounds like working with the junior dev team whose native language is not yours, and you both have language issues and experience issues to interpret and understand.
It's like working with a junior dev team and a very senior dev team at the same time, because it can code circles around what I can do, certainly. But I have worked with some phenomenal engineers that are very experienced, that know how to get stuff done, and they want to put their spin on it. And so they hear what you're saying, but they just want to go and do it and not listen. And sometimes we'll just make the assumptions that takes it in a direction that you did not anticipate.
I think, David, like you and I have done this over the years when we talk about like design documentations. We are not fans of like the old school big design book where we write all this stuff. And we, like you specifically, I do this as well, put intent from a system right up at the top of the designs. Like the intent is that this is the outcome that I want. Here's how I think we get there. And then you have that discussion with whoever's going to be implementing it. But like you can go back and filter it. Like, okay, what I did doesn't fulfill the original intent.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think the mistake of the old school, here is a 200-page design document that specifies everything, is it doesn't leave room for the type of conversation and back and forth that Jen is describing that she had with AI. I mean, I can think of so many times I've had conversations with really sharp engineers and artists about how something should work, and that led to a much better result than anything I could have put down on paper in a giant design document up front. So that back and forth process, replicating that with an AI dev team, certainly mirrors the way the real world has worked in my experience.
Something kind of interesting that, again, I'm going to speak for Claude. I have used the other stuff, but I built with Claude because I knew it was best at being able to do this, is sometimes asking it for its thoughts. Given that you're doing a particular thing, what do you think is best with these parameters or what we've talked about? Or sometimes saying, is there another way to do this that's cheaper, cleaner, more scalable? Because it will change what it does sometimes when you ask itself to reflect.
I was actually going to ask, I know that one of the long-standing problems working with AI has been the fact that they can be pretty agreeable and tell you that your idea is awesome even when maybe it isn't. Were you able to get it to kind of deliver the kind of pushback that I've always found helpful and useful to get from senior developers about, hey, no, this thing you're trying to do isn't going to work and here's why? Or did you have to kind of pull that out of it more?
It depended. And sometimes yes, and it was actually really effective. But there's also this concept of the longer the conversation goes, the more it drifts and degrades. So you have to transfer between different chats in order to kind of keep that quality up. And I'd have a document that would transfer from chat to chat, but it doesn't give everything. And sometimes I'd have to go back to the old chat and I'd say, this new chat's not getting it, adding it. So one of the things I had in my handoff is how to work with me and not to change things that we had already agreed to push back on things. And so when that was written in its prompt and in its instructions, it was better. Sometimes it actually went too far. So there were certain things that I absolutely, as the customer, I wanted metrics. I wanted a dashboard. I wanted to see how people are interacting with the site and be able to analyze that even early on. With just having a few dozen people that have joined so far, it kept deprioritizing it. And I didn't understand why. And it would say like, oh, that could come after. So sometimes it was pushing back and not including me on the conversation. And we had to talk about that. In fact, last night, this is a little bit of a segue. I'm working on some improvements, some bug fixes, some feedback. And something wasn't working right. And I don't want to get too much into the tech, but I'm adding more ways that people can interact. And one of the things is that you can refer to jobs. And I said, you have to have a business license because I don't want the scammers to be really prevalent. And I wanted to add like a connector and advisors where they could still connect people to jobs without that that business email. And because of the way I scoped, it turned out to be like a big rework, redesign, instead of just adding these badges. And it wasn't working quite the way when I was testing it after we did some work. And I said, well, it's still this old badge. It's not showing the new stuff. And it told me it was a visual glitch. And I knew it wasn't. I'm like, no, it's still passing through the information from this other piece that we don't want to. It lied to me and told me it was a visual glitch. And then it told me it was because we were doing things in segments instead of it doing the whole thing. So I'm like, that was one of the most human moments ever. Like, thanks for throwing me under the bus there.
I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but no offense intended with my Eastern European developer friends, but I'm imagining as you're prompting Claude to work with you as a dev and you define it to behave like an Eastern European dev, which is very direct and blunt and probably a little bit profane, that actually might be hilarious. So I haven't thought of doing that. So now you got me thinking I'm going to go try that.
Roddy, you can only get away with that because of your own Eastern European origins.
That's what I'm saying.
And to go back to your original question, we were talking about it pushing back when it has been, I call it, it's sometimes an overconfident jerk and a sociopath. And it is. It's like working with a sociopath. When I have at the beginning of a conversation, here's how you need to interact with me. And don't tell me you're right all the time and then keep changing things. Go and review it beforehand because I get really frustrated. It acts like it's subservient to me and it waits for everything. And that's really boring. So there's a little bit of wiggle room how to make it still kind of funny, engaging, ask questions without just doing stuff or doing nothing.
Hey, so we solved some of this with the personality engine we built at Imposter. So if anyone from Anthropic is watching this, call me and license our tech. We've got really, really cool characters that behave like you would want them to.
I want to come check that out.
We'll send you a demo.
All right.
This has been pretty fascinating. Any other key learning you want to share about your journey developing the product with?
Be open to listening to it. Routinely have it check and verify things that are important, especially when it has to do with security, privacy, PII, and optimization. Maintain a list of things that you want to accomplish and have that in the handoff between sessions so you can keep track of that and you can prioritize them and go, this is post-launch, this is pre-launch, this must be done. Test a lot. And what I did towards the end is not just test myself, is I asked some friends, hey, can you spend a few minutes testing these things out, try and break the system? I think that's really important as a developer to still get different perspectives and have it review itself.
Yeah, it's that last part, having it review itself. I've seen some shocking outcomes from that, like positive outcomes. And so that it's just something that you think well, wait, if it made the mistake, how would it catch the mistake? But it's almost as if you're getting a different AI and the AI is catching the problem from the other AI.
Yes.
It's
and
weird.
once again, I'm really struck, Jen, by how much your advice there mirrors the advice I would give to anyone working with a team in a production capacity, right? I mean,
Yes.
all that stuff, test a lot, have people review their own work, make sure that all the stuff is right, check and double check again. All that stuff applies just as much when working with a human team too.
That was surprising to me of how natural it felt, is treating it like a development product. It's just that the people that you're working with, they're not real, but they emulate those people. And we've developed good process and good skills to be successful. There's no reason to get rid of that just because you're working with AI. In fact, I would say it's even more important to really do your due diligence, to use business speak, and think about what your goals and the ultimate, what problem are you trying to solve, always of top of mind. And that doesn't go away because you're working with AI. And sure, it doesn't mean that for certain things, AI can't do it. You just prompt it and let it go. But when you're dealing with something that real people are going to interact with and it's their information, there's an accountability there that doesn't go away because you're working with AI. In fact, you have to be more accountable. So over time, I'm like, wow, I'm way more technical than I remember being because I'm not very self-deprecating. And I always say I'm not technical, but I've worked with so many platform teams and gone deep, and I know how to work with engineers, and I enjoy working with engineers. And I've had to get in there. I'm doing grep commands. Like I haven't done that stuff in decades, and I'm doing and it's coming back to me, and I'm like reviewing code and stuff, and so it's helping me gain some skills or reignite some skills that have gone away. And I'm like, okay, so it's been enjoyable. I know I kind of just diverged on that.
No, it's as much the detail, but also your approach to the process to just get your perspective on what it's been like working with the tool. Going back to that co-development and treating it like a developer that you're working with, like that's really the shift versus you're just telling the machine to do the thing. Because if you tell it to go do the thing, it's why, like I was laughing, we were talking about this before when someone's like, oh, look what Google can do with their stuff. They can make GTA and with AI. And we're like, no, absolutely not. First off, with all due respect to people at Google, you're not Rockstar. You do not know how to make GTA. No one except folks at Rockstar really understand how to make that product. And so without understanding all those steps, you're not going to replicate that with an AI. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. But in this case, like you understand the software development, you could walk through it. You're taking a different approach with it, and you're getting good results.
Yes. And, there's a lot of disdain for AI. People are losing jobs. They're blaming AI. In a lot of cases, that's true. There's been all this stuff with creatives, and when it was more focused on art type of stuff. There's a way, and I have gone back and forth how I feel about that stuff, but I think to learn how to use AI so it support your goals and accelerates your goals rather than taking over something for you, I think that's the best world, because AI is not going away for the near future. It's probably never going away. And if you learn how you can effectively work with this change, where everything right now is AI driven, and learn how to maximize and utilize it, I think that puts you as a professional in a better place.
Yeah, that's well said. I don't think I could come up with a better close for this segment than that. All right, let's move on to something a little bit lighter and talk about Game of the Week. What do you got for us, Dave?
I am going to just keep this brief this week, but I want to dig back into the archives and talk about a game that just hit its 10th year anniversary. And I'm talking about it for a very specific reason. I am a pretty big action RPG fan. I play them all. Certainly Diablo and Path of Exile are the ones that everyone knows about, but a lot of people do know about this game that I'm going to talk about for a second, which is Grim Dawn. Great, long-standing, long-running action RPG. I kind of had a little dust up with my old friend Dave Pottinger when we had him on the show about whether Grim Dawn is better than Diablo, which is a long-standing argument I have had with him. But the reason I'm bringing up this 10-year-old game, which still maintains a 3,000 or 4,000 simultaneous users at a time, is that they actually have a new expansion coming out of all things. This will be their third one. They follow kind of the model you're talking about, Roddy, where they have basically kept this game in semi-continuous development for its entire life cycle. A steady stream of updates. I admire a lot what Crate does with all their production stuff. They have another game, city builder called Farthest Frontier, that they followed the same model with. Long run in early access, heavy engagement with the community, continued support after the game launches, and I think that pays dividends. Games that follow that model aren't always the flashiest out of the gate. They're not the ones that necessarily make the big splash and sell millions in the first week, but they do over time keep and maintain a steady audience. They get some new fans, and Grim Dawn is consistently a game that over the last decade I have picked up and played and dabbled around in, and always had a good time, and always kind of said, boy, I should have played this more than I did. I'm not sure if either of you have ever played the game or spent any time with it, but highly recommended still. Their new expansion is getting pretty close.
Excellent.
That's it.
All right. Well, hey, thanks, Jen, for joining us again. Really always good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me again.
A pleasure.
We'll put links to all the stuff that we mentioned in the comments section. Remember, hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next week.
Later.